Motion approved or made by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us to tonight's number 4 public hearing, and that is the Eagle Pointe Second Edition, and that's with Kathy Bodmer. We will now open the public hearing for Agenda 4A. The affidavit of publication for the notice of public hearing is available for inspection in the Planning Department. Everyone wishing to speak at this public hearing should be sure to fill out the attendance roster with their names and their addresses so that accurate records can be maintained. We will begin the procedure with a brief presentation by city staff, followed by a presentation by the petitioner of the hearing. Upon the conclusion of the presentation, city staff will be asked to comment on the proposal's conformance with pertinent regulations and policies. After that, comments will be taken from the general public. Please come to the podium to speak and address all comments and questions to the chair. Hi, Kathy.
Good evening. Hello, Madam Chair, Planning Commissioners. Well, let's see if we can get the roller going here. A second here. Here we go. You're not doing anything?
No.
Okay. I've got jumpy hands tonight. Let me back up. Well, wrong direction. Hello. Eagle Pointe LLC is the property owner and developer of this project, and they are requesting consideration of 2 actions. A public hearing to consider subdivision by preliminary plat of Eagle Pointe, Apple Valley, 2nd edition, and then site plan review building permit authorization for phase 2 Eagle Pointe edition. The preliminary plat for the 21.3 acre former Apple Valley Golf Course was approved August 12th, 2021. Phase 1 development plans were approved for final development April 27, 2023. Phase 2 then is a 10.3 acre piece of the overall Eagle Pointe Apple Valley. It was under the preliminary plat previously approved, but the petitioners are requesting a small change, and so that's why we're here this evening. The comprehensive plan guides the development for LDF, low density flex, and is correspondingly zoned LDF, low density flex, single family zoning designation. The low density flex designation was created to help provide a buffer between low density residential areas and higher density areas, basically by allowing for a mix of housing types. The goal is to help to provide buffer and nice transitions between residential districts. Like any other zoning district, the LDF has setback requirements, lot area, lot width requirements. One of the unique features of this residential zoning designation is that it limits the height of buildings to 2 stories and 35 feet. So it's keeping the height down a little bit to, again, make sure that it's compatible with surrounding residential areas. Phase 1 is underway right now, under development. Private streets, utilities, and so forth are being installed, and building permits are in for review and should be issued soon if they haven't started yet. So we know the developers are anxious and they're excited to get moving forward. When the overall Eagle Pointe Apple Valley development was approved, there was some outstanding kind of design issues that were going on that needed to be kind of hammered out. The developer was ready to get moving on half of the development, but not all of it. And so what they did is they designed the development without a 3-unit building on the south side. It was outside of the ponding areas. This allowed for them to create the ponding and the utility connections that were needed. What they've done now is, now that the ponds are designed, they know how much room is available. They're requesting that the city consider allowing them to add a 3-unit building. So this is a copy of the preliminary plat. In total, 27 units were approved, combination detached villas and attached townhomes. And the 3-unit building would bring the unit count up to 30. No other change to the layout, street configuration, anything else. So the primary piece of this request is just adding that 3-unit building. Site plan, similarly, the 30 units in total with the 3-unit additional building. Again, no change to the overall layout. There are a couple of items that will need to be addressed, and we'll talk about those more toward the end. With the addition of the 3-unit building, additional visitor parking is needed, so we've got some refinements that would need to be made if this moved forward. And again, no change then to the number of villas. They stay the same at 11, and then the number of townhomes goes from 16 to 19. Grading and drainage was reviewed by the assistant city engineer. His memo is part of the packet this evening. No significant outstanding issues at this time. Same with utilities. Those have been reviewed consistent with what was previously approved. Landscaping in multiple family zoning districts is like commercial development in that the value of landscape plantings are required to be 2.5% of the value of construction of the building. So what they've got is two types of landscape plans. One is the overall site layout, and this is the overview of that for the second phase. Natural Resources did review this. The one comment that they did have is that they would encourage the developer to consider more natural plantings. But aside from that, no real significant outstanding issues. Then the villas, the detached townhomes, individual plantings, and this is just one landscape package of 4 that they have on offer as part of their sales. And then the townhome foundation package, similar, a lot of change in and out. A person has a lot to select from. So moving on then to the elevation drawings. The elevations help to show the exterior design of the buildings. One of the things that we will need to do is to confirm the height of the buildings. There's no math that helps us to make sure that it doesn't exceed the 35 feet. So that's just something that we'll look for. So kind of a minor detail. Exterior building materials are mostly LP siding, so lap siding, and then different styles of LP. They're showing board and batten. They're showing just the typical siding. They're showing shakes. So a variety of styles on offer for the buyers. There is a knee wall in the front of the home that is made of cultured stone. So that helps to kind of break up that front elevation. Let's see if we can get this thing to go. Come on. There we go. Side and rear elevations are similar. Primarily the LP, the lap siding is the style that's used here, not a lot of variety or breakup here. And then with the townhomes, here again, all LP products, but kind of in varying designs. And again, they do have the stone treatment in the front of the units, the front elevation, but not carrying it through to the side or the back. Oop. So, summary of issues, a few minor outstanding items yet to be discussed. Number of visitor parking spaces needs to be increased from 12 to 15. Visitor parking spaces are currently 18 feet, need another 6 inches on those. No big deal. Height of the villas needs to be verified. Right now it looks like they're in the 30-foot, maybe 32. I don't think they exceed the 35, but we will need verification for that. And then last, the petitioners are requesting a variance from the exterior building materials requirement for buildings 12 through 16 from 155346, and I'll go through that real briefly here. So in the code 155346, the exterior building elevations, the city code requires that multiple residential buildings adjacent to R zones or occupied M zones shall have a vertical exposed exterior finish of at least 50% non-combustible, non-degradable, and maintenance-free construction material, such as face brick or natural stone. So this is a requirement that we've had for many, many years, and what it does is for, again, transition of neighborhoods, for view as you drive around the neighborhood. It just helps to kind of break up the appearance of the buildings. But I should note that it does state at the end, with the balance being a non-manufactured natural construction material such as plank, cedar, or redwood, which we haven't seen in many, many years. So the petitioner is pushing back a little bit, concerned about, well, what is it you guys are really trying to go for? Are you going for fireproof? Are you going for brick? What's your goal? So we need to spend a little bit more time and kind of review this and look at it. But what ends up happening is one of the 4-unit buildings meets the criteria for needing this treatment. And the petitioner is asking for consideration to not have to do that. And again, the townhomes, that front facade, they do show that the knee wall in the front, but then the sides in the rear don't have that treatment. So that's something that we'll need to discuss in more detail. So with that, Madam Chair, staff is recommending opening the public hearing, receiving comments, and closing the public hearing. And I'd be happy to stand for questions if there are any.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, Kathy, remind me, is this public or private streets? I don't recall from when we last worked on this.
Internal is private.
These are private.
Yep.
So as a private street, how are those set up for parking on the street? Are they just, they're not designed for street parking, are they?
That's correct. So the street width is 28 feet face to face. And what the city engineer and the city planner at the time reviewed and considered was not allowing on-street parking at all because of the width of the street and the fact that there's one access point into the development. Mm-hmm. So the only visitor parking that's available is driveways and then these parking islands, the break-off areas.
There's like 3 of them currently?
Yeah. I counted 12 total.
Yeah.
So we just need one more grouping.
I just know living in a newer neighborhood where there's parking on one side of the street, we have parking on one side, and that it becomes an issue. All you have to have is one person having a party or something, and there's not, people aren't following the parking rules, and then egress for emergency, fire, so forth, becomes very difficult. So having those extra parking spots, it's going to be important to figure those out. Then moving on, I guess I'm a little, what is missing from the combustible materials on those, was it 12 through 16 units on the end?
Yeah.
Concern?
Basically, the way that we have interpreted this, oops, am I going the wrong direction? I might be. Villa, landscape, utilities, so who's driving? Is we would like to see this treatment repeated along the side and the back of the building, the knee wall.
Okay.
The petitioner is here this evening so he could speak to more of their concern. It would be different since it's the only building out there that would have that treatment. But staff finds that it does help to kind of break up that facade a little bit, give it a little more interest and texture.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of going with a variance because that's just going to open up things in the future for us. That's going to come back and, yeah, I think that's something they just need to be able to work through. The ordinance is there, lays it out. Everybody up to this point has been, I don't recall ever having to put a variance on this here, so.
No.
No, and the importance and the reason why it's there, so. So those are the comments I have.
Kathy, I have a few.
Sure.
First of all, why am I thinking porches? Didn't we discuss that before with something with a seating arrangement in the front or something? Or was that in phase 1 or something? Am I not, anybody else remember that? Porches?
It may be, could it be related to the villas? I don't know. I'd ask the
Okay, I will, all right.
developer to.
And I think it's very important to verify the height, you know, I mean, I don't think that's likely. I think that's an important thing because that's kind of our big discussion we had was the height of the low and density and everything. And then I'm gonna hit on adding 3 more. Can we discuss that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I'm not for it. I think that we've already been there, done that. That ship has sailed as far as I'm concerned, right? I mean, I hate to open up that can of worm again, to start going through this all again. To me, this is a done, sealed deal. It's my opinion, but should have been figured out before it was brought to us the first time is my thing on it.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I would like to make the comment, which I haven't yet. Overall, the number of units for the whole development goes from 77 to 80. And that brings the density from 4.0 units an acre to 4.2. So it's still pretty low in that 3 to 8 units an acre.
And I respect that. I guess I'm just looking at the resident side of it, of how they, you know, we kind of came up with this to please everybody and stuff. And to me now, we're kind of adding some things that to me wasn't fair to the residents to bring that up now since the beginning of it.
Okay.
Should have been brought it up to the beginning is my thing.
Okay.
Commissioner Sandell?
Madam Chair, Kathy, I think I echo some similar concerns. I joined the commission right at the very beginning or right at the end of this being approved. So I might not have all the right memories of this, but I don't remember being told that there was a phase 1 and then a phase 2 coming later on. And so it almost feels like a little bit of a bait and switch type of a thing to me, where it's like, yeah, this is what we said, and now all of a sudden we're going to add in these 3 more. And I understand within the zoning it's allowed and it's still in the right numbers. I think my other concern with it is walking around in that area, one of the things I love about that area is that you can't see all the townhomes very easily that are in that area because everything is kind of set back and it's all, and these ones are kind of coming even closer. And I know that there are some that are closer, so it's not entirely, but it just feels like kind of adding even more closer to the streets. So just my thoughts.
Okay, okay.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, Kathy, on that topic of these 3 units, and I know when we looked at this previously, the specific configuration of the drainage pond wasn't configured at that time, but what were we looking at this space? What was this designated or showed at previously? These 3 units
Just
are.
open space. Let me see if I can get to that. Nope, backwards, I'm sorry. Don't ask me to drive. So I don't have a site plan, I apologize, but it's
No,
it's
no, that's
mostly
fine.
just an open space.
You know, I'm hearing with Madam Chair was talking too, and I look at this also that, I mean, that with going to my concern with parking, that especially when you start looking at some of the units like 55, 6, 7, you look at some of these units or any of those in between the parking areas, there's no easy parking access to those. Not that putting it at the end is going to resolve that problem either, but okay. Thank you, Kathy.
Commissioner Schindler, any comments?
Madam Chair, would there be, is that still, the distance from 140th is still appropriate?
Yes, yep, it still meets the setback requirements.
I don't like when stuff's added at the last minute, kind of like this type of a thing. I guess I'm wondering why that wasn't planned on the front end. But I mean, it's because it's pretty much set up the same way. But
Yeah, and we can bring back information on that, kind of the timing. I know that the city worked with the developer on the design of some of that ponding because some city water uses those ponding areas, so, but we can ask the city engineer to give more information when we come back.
Yeah, because I don't see any change from the previous one either, you know, that the water isn't around there or whatever, so I guess I'm wondering why it wasn't put on the first one also, so. Anyone else? Okay, would the applicant like to speak? Hi.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Matt with Brandon Anderson Homes. Just to, I guess, touch base on the 3 units. My understanding when we originally got a preliminary plat is that we needed ponding there, just oversizing with all the water that was coming into the site. And after that was done, working with Brandon and engineering, they found a better solution that we're putting in oversized piping that is running along 140th and is going under 140th and then out to another site. And so that created I guess, an opportunity for us then to use that space to put in that building. I think our original site plan that we drew up had it in there, but then we needed to remove it for this oversized ponding that was needed just to accommodate all the water that was coming to that site. And so with that change in plan of moving that water to a different location, it opened up this opportunity for putting back in these 3 lots. So, that was kind of in the works last year, and that's why we went in. That's why we went in for the final plat for the first phase, and then was suggested to do this in a second phase opportunity to add these back in.
I think even if the previous one, if somebody would have presented it and said, this is how it is, but there is a possibility of us maybe moving the pond or something, and this might be an option down the road. You know, I feel like there was never any discussion at it at the beginning.
Yeah, because I think that probably at the planning commission meetings, it wasn't really, we thought that ship had sailed, like it was necessary for the pond to be of a larger size there to hold all the stormwater. And then as, I wish Brandon was here, but as I think city staff or engineering took a look at it further, they came up with a better solution, a long-term solution by moving the water from that location up 140th to the northwest and then underneath it. And then there must be some
Sure.
engineering stuff that I'm not too
Well, we don't
familiar
have
with.
Brandon here, but we do have an engineer here, so.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Matt. Yeah, it probably would be best suited to have Brandon maybe a little bit more involved in the conversations from the first site meeting, since I also wasn't here for that. But what Matt's referring to with the oversized storm pipe, the city and Brandon Anderson worked together to essentially invest city funds into mitigating stormwater capacity that's coming from other neighborhoods and would otherwise be required to be ponded within this development. And the city is spending our own storm fund dollars to keep that water moving through the site as a greater benefit to both the development and the city itself, where it can be treated further downstream. So I can't exactly speak to the first site plan meeting, but relatively early or shortly around the first site plan meeting, the city was investigating ways to facilitate removing that burden from the developer.
Okay, thank you.
And then just on the other piece on the, I think it's a 5-unit building that backs up to Garden View. Yeah, we just were asking for a variance with the stone on all, I guess, 4 sides actually. There's going to be, I think, a 10-foot drop from Garden View down to the foundation level, and then a retaining wall that backs up to Garden View as well. So the visibility of that is not going to be, it's not going to be like in your face when you're on Garden View driving by with the stone on the back of those homes. And then just kind of trying to keep a consistent look throughout the development.
But the side would still be exposed though, wouldn't it?
The side on
back
the,
of it,
yeah,
but
the,
side.
what would be what, the southeast side?
Any other comments or questions for him? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll go to the audience, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, would anybody like to come up or? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Planning Commission. My name is Carol Elfstrom, and our home is at 8580 136 Court. So we back up directly to that hilltop where we're talking about. Just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I guess my first thought, just as a neighbor in the area, is my preference would be no, only because we did go through all of this and discussed how the site would end up, and I thought came to a good conclusion. I certainly understand the opportunity that's here from the builder's perspective, and I don't disagree with that, but from a neighborhood perspective, it would seem like, given the new solution the city found to better handle the water, and that's being handled by the city on all of our behalf, that maybe for the neighbors, we could preserve the more open look of not having one more building that close to 140th. It does really change kind of the look of the whole project from a neighborhood perspective. So just wanted to share those comments.
Okay, thanks, Carol. Anyone else? Any more, Kathy? No? Okay.
I was going to ask Kathy one question.
I think Commissioner Scanlon would like to ask you a question, Kathy.
Madam Chair, Kathy, when you after we're done here and you have an open year, just kind of talk about figuring things out. I mean, is there one compromise to look at is go from a 3 units to 2 units and then add some parking down at that end of the area, and that would take the one unit away from being so as close at number 17, for an example, or reposition it so it's not so close, possibly. So
Sure.
I know
Something
that-
certainly we could
yeah.
talk about.
it was just a thought that I had, and I know with the drainage, that was a big concern from the very beginning with the neighborhood all around, because there's been issues with when you have significant rain with the neighborhood, and this correction that took place was a big part of trying to fix all that in the big picture, so, okay, that's all. Thanks, Kathy.
Kathy, lastly, I'm just going to mention one more thing is, with those 3 units being added at this point, maybe it would have affected some different thoughts and discussion beforehand, before we approved it the first time, or, whatever. And that's why I kind of feel like adding these 3 might have changed our thought process on it, okay?
Okay.
Okay, with that, I will close. If there are no further comments, I will close this public hearing. Sorry, I'm getting old and I need my cheaters, I guess. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item on the same night as the public hearing. The Planning Commission will weigh all comments and information received tonight in its deliberations at future meetings. This item will continue to appear on future Planning Commission agendas until a recommendation on the petition can be forwarded to the City Council, okay? Thank you. Brings us to number 5, land use and action items. It's the northeast corner of Gossamer Way and 138th Street West setback variance. And we welcome Alex Sharp.
Thank you, Chair and Commission. As noted, this is a variance for the northeast corner of Gossamer Way and 138th Street. It is the policy of the Planning Commission not to act on an item the evening with introduction. However, if the Planning Commission concurs, staff is recommending this variance move forward to City Council. The site is, as stated, in the northeast corner of Gossamer and 138th Street West. It is Lot 5, Block 7, the Oaks of Apple Valley. The lot currently does not have an address. However, staff is under review with an address right now and is currently under the proposal that it would be 7577 138th Street West. This could change in the future if access were taken off of Gossamer. This is an updated aerial of the site. It has been partially graded since the original area that you saw there was taken. This was done this spring. The site is zoned R5. R5 is a duplex zone that also allows for single-family dwellings. The setback requirements in R5 are a 30-foot off of a street side setback and a 7.5-foot side off of, or a 7.5-foot interior lot side lot line setback. So the 30-foot would be off on this side and 7.5 on this side. I do want to point out that on other corner lots, you do have a significant setback off when they were planned for it. The reason why I'm emphasizing that is because the Oaks of Apple Valley Second, where this lot was platted, was done in 1989. In 1989, this lot, highlighted in the red box, Lot 5, Block 7, was anticipated to have an additional partner lot where the duplex lot would be located. So if we go back to here, it was anticipated to be like these 2 units, essentially. However, in 2005, Valley Oaks Estates came through, and when they did so, they put in Gossamer Way. Gossamer Way essentially removed a 60-foot wide section of what was a R5 lot and turned it into the right-of-way for Gossamer Way, removing the partner lot for this lot. Doing so turned this into a corner lot. In 2019, the property went tax forfeiture and was up for auction. At that time, staff created a handout, which you are seeing an excerpt from here, that essentially was distributed to all potential buyers of the property, stating that here's the build area required by code in the red box, and the yellow box was a staff recommended 10-foot variance. And by the staff recommended, we didn't mean that it was a guaranteed approval by any means, but it was a staff recommends that if you come forward or purchase this lot, that you submit an application for a setback variance off of that side. The primary reasons for this is that With the 7.5-foot setback off the eastern side and the 30-foot setback off the western side, it allowed for a 22.5-foot wide building pad area. Pretty small in terms of most of our building pads. 60-foot wide lot is already relatively restrictive. And then when you consider the fact that our most prolific zoning district, R3, a single-family zoning district, allows for a 20-foot street side setback, where this would be suggested at being at, and this being a single-family home, it seemed to be a good parallel that this lot would also receive a similar provision as the R3. I would note that the R3 zone is 25% of the community, and so there is a fair amount of land that would have this same 20-foot setback rather than the 30-foot setback required by the R5. The developer has come forward with a sample plan. This plan does have some concerns that staff has noted in our review. However, through these, what we have offered in the draft resolution is the ability for the developer to try to work through some of these at a later date at the building permit timeframe, rather than continually moving forward with a variance that we felt was otherwise very applicable. On this plan, you see kind of the dotted dashed line being a retaining wall around the home. This creates kind of a difficult lot to develop on. The grades on the lot are certainly challenging, and we want to work with the developer to do so, but there are issues where we would have concerns at a building permit level with this. We do not feel that they pertain to the variance, however, because the variance would stand even if the orientation of the home were, say, to come off of Gossamer Way. So you have a draft resolution in your packet that includes a provision that the final site plan be approved by the community development director, which it would do so, or their designee, which would do so through a site plan or through a building permit application anyway. But in the meantime, what we will be doing is working with the developer to ensure that the lot meets all of our other provisions, sewer connections, grades for driveway, ensuring that there's a backyard. These are the things that staff has expressed as a concern that we'll continue working on, but we're wanting to move forward so that the lot can actually begin some of those steps if the variance were moved forward this evening. I've got a couple of photos of the property that have happened since the grading. As you can see, the grade does go from the north side, which is in the far side of the lot here, to the south. Those grades, while they don't appear very steep here, do result in around an 8 to 9 foot grade change between the front and the back of the lot. That is presenting some difficulties for the driveway, the home placement, pad, that will need to get worked through. This showed it just a little bit better. It's a corner, so one was taken from a south elevation, the next is just taken from a corner to try to show a little bit more of that slope. Essentially what happened with this lot is when Gossamer Way was dug out, all of the dirt from Gossamer Way was piled onto this lot, creating some grade issues. The subdivision to the north was custom graded, and by the custom grading, all the lots don't necessarily align like they would in a larger neighborhood. And I think that's creating some of the issues, is we don't want to create a large dip when you go from the lot behind this one down to this one. This is a sample elevation that the developer has provided. I would note it is flipped from what you will see on the survey, so it is a mirror. The garage would be on the left, door would be on the right. I'm sorry, I'm saying that backwards. Dyslexia is fun. So this is a flipped, we do see this fairly often in building plans where they submit a flipped plan or a mirrored plan. So not something that we're concerned at this time. At building permit time, I do believe that they require them to show the correct elevations. A representative of the developer is present this evening if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I stand for questions as well.
Alex, can you go back one?
Yes.
One more. So I see that that lot is much higher than the next lot.
Yes.
So you're telling me, are they gonna bring it down a little bit? I mean, I wouldn't want a house overlooking me that high and stuff, so just curious.
Chair Kurtz, there may not be the ability to fully bring it down due to the depth of the sewer in the roadway. So the ability to sink this lot is what they were looking at doing, what's shown on that survey with kind of the U-shaped retaining wall. That in itself will present difficulties of how much yard is usable. Are they creating drainage issues for a basement? Are they There are a number of issues that don't necessarily pertain to the variance in itself that make this a challenging lot to develop, but definitely one that has some opportunities to it. So I think that's a consideration for us, is what does this do to the neighboring lot? We want to make sure that it doesn't push particularly the stormwater drainage into that lower lot.
Right.
But those are all code provisions that we are able to rely on to make sure that they are met, rather than needing to, the variance does not directly pertain to any one of the drainage issues, essentially.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Madam Chair, Alex, what is the, do you have any pictures of the property that would be behind this?
Trying to find presentation mode, one moment. I did not mean to leave it. So this is kind of the best that I'm able to do at this time.
Okay, so as you've mentioned, is there any type of retaining wall or anything there now?
There is not.
It just blends in or sits above the current
Chair
lot?
Kurtz, Commissioner Scanlon, there's not, let's see if I can actually go to the survey. So essentially what the lots do, Chair Kurtz, Commissioner Scanlon, is they go down for a brief time to elevation of 1,005 and then back up to 1,008 and then back down to 1,006, showing the mound that I'd referred to. Much of that mound has been already removed.
Right.
A significant portion of that mound has already been removed
Okay.
on the site. So there are grading concerns with the site and how it aligns with the next lot.
All of which really aren't part of our discussion tonight. They're correct. It's just mainly allowing for the setback, or the variance in the setback. Like you said, there's a number of challenges here that are kind of outside our scope that we're not.
Chair Kurtz, Commissioner Scanlon, the question comes down to, do they relate directly to that 10-foot setback variance, or would that 10-foot setback variance be affected by those grades? And staff's recommendation is, because the lot is constrained without those grades, and those constraints aren't created by those constraints aren't being created by the grades, that they are essentially two separate issues.
As far as the setback, I'm not overly concerned with that. It's just as you've mentioned yourself, the city has already had a concern with this U-shaped wall system to make a pad for the house to sit on, and what that means for the neighboring properties. And like you said, there are some significant challenges into developing this. Last and finally, is there a preference from the city's perspective on how this is developed from the front of the house, being a quarter lot?
Chair Kurtz, Commissioner Scanlon, the front by code is off of 138th. I believe engineering has looked at trying to orient the home potentially off of Gossamer up in this direction. With this lot, there's always going to be some conflicting pieces. The desire to create a yard is always present within planning. And how much of a yard will it create if it's just corner lot and this is the front and you can't fence in more than a 3.5-foot fence in the front? So there are going to be competing interests with this lot.
Yeah.
What ends up being the best for one thing may not be the best for every aspect of it. As we've actually worked on this application, I think we've received it twice prior to this with withdrawals while we were working through these issues. At this time, staff's recommendation comes from, if we grant the variance, perhaps we can start working on some of these other issues and remove them piece by piece.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
No? Okay.
Yeah, that's my last question.
Commissioner Sandal?
Madam Chair, Alex, this is more just to give me understanding. What's the purpose of the setback? Is it sightlines? Is it consistency in the neighborhood?
Chair Kurtz, Commissioner Sandhall, with a typical street side setback, it's the combination of sight lines, but those are generally already taken care of. It's usually because your yard is diminished by having two streets on either side of it, so your privacy. So it's about a character of a neighborhood piece. So usually if you look in any neighborhood, the corner lot is almost always the largest. And that's because they are limited in a number of different ways, where your fence can be, the sightline triangles. Even the setbacks for your structures are greater to allow for your home to not be in close proximity to the street. So even when you look at the other lot in this neighborhood that has that significant setback, they're actually set back farther than the 30 feet. They're set at around 35, but that's also off of Cedar. Land is essentially used as a buffer from the busy roadway and public access area where most have an interior lot. So it's as much about character in some ways as it is about sightline triangles and safety. The safety aspect could be established with a smaller setback, but do you end up with a lot that's not as attractive as, say, an interior lot because it's got reduced privacy?
Sure. Okay, thank you. And then I appreciated your further explanation of where the driveway would go, because my initial thought was, of course, you would want it off of Gossamer Way. It's less busy, but I'll let you all work through all those issues. Thank you.
Okay. Would the applicant like to speak?
I don't have too much to add.
Not too much to add? Does anybody have any questions for him that would be additional?
Hi, my name is Tony Brown, and I got asked to come down here to, the other guys are out of town. So I got the one that got elected to do it, I guess, but
Through the short stick.
I'm the actual builder that's gonna build this structure.
Okay.
And that house, I do have the correct plan with me too, in full size if somebody wanted to see it with the garage right. We put a lot of thought into trying to figure out how can we adapt the house to fit the site the best and minimize. And I had suggested in my discussions with the surveyor, experienced civil engineer surveyor here, this Pioneer Engineering, Pete, if we raise the top of the foundation of the house, it's gonna enable us to diminish the height of that retaining wall too. And most of the retaining wall, that height is just on the back side, and it will taper down as you go to the front. But we can drop it a foot probably by raising the height of the foundation. The garage slab's gotta stay where it is, so we don't, we can't sink it any further. And I did have a discussion, one thing I wanted to add is, the neighbor to the right, he's got a retaining wall and fence that's actually over the property line. And he was very receptive. He said, whatever you think, we can make it better for both our yards. He said, I'm all for it. So, you know, we've got some cooperation there to try and blend those two grades too. So I was happy to hear is not every neighbor is always willing to.
It's always good.
But he said, oh, whatever we gotta do. I don't know, maybe he's feeling guilty as retaining walls on the property too. But, you know, looking at the best way to put a house on here, it's a more challenging site, but I've worked on a lot more challenging than this one, so I don't think it's impossible to do. And, you know, we've got enough fall away from the house, from the top of foundation. At the height the surveyor put on here, now he's at top of foundation of 1,003.5. And we discussed raising it to 1,004.5. So that would allow us to get a little bit more taper away from the house and drop that retaining wall.
So building a rambler isn't a good idea.
It doesn't really
shorter?
gain us much. The only advantage to a rambler, it's gonna be more expensive to do that, for one. But if we're, with this particular plan, it looks like a two-story, but it's not actually a two-story. It's a nice looking plan for a split multi-level plan, in my opinion. But, the top of foundation, we can set, whether it's a multi-level plan like this or a rambler, we can only pull it so high. It's gonna increase the amount of stairs out of the garage. We have a little bit bigger, a little bit wider garage, so we can put some risers in the garage. But pulling it more than what we've got now is gonna make it undesirable. So a rambler isn't gonna fit any better.
Okay.
You still gotta get in the garage somehow. And you can only set your garage slab
so high above the street, or you're gonna be too high, your driveway slope would be too much. So we have it as high as we'd be comfortable trying to do in terms of the driveway slab. So then it's just a matter of changing the top of the foundation of the house. So Rambler going deeper isn't really gonna do much for us.
Thank you. Anybody else? Questions? Thank you for your
Okay,
time.
yeah, thanks.
What is the pleasure of the commissioners on? Do you have any more questions for Alex? Anybody? Any thoughts?
Madam Chair, I recommend approval of a 10-foot street side setback, yard setback variance from 30 feet setback to a 20-foot setback.
Second?
Okay. The motion was made by Commissioner Scanlon and seconded by Commissioner Schindler. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That brings us to other business and Mr. Tim Benetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to remind you, our next meeting is next Wednesday, August 16th, so in 2 weeks. I believe we have a few items on that agenda scheduled. The following meeting will be on September 6th, 2023. Our council meetings are August 10th and 24th respectively. And that's all the information we have for you tonight.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Scanlon, seconded by Commissioner Schindler. This meeting is adjourned.